At first hearing, it sounds like a mad idea. Why should governments pay people not to work by providing all citizens with a universal basic income? But this idea is gaining ground as people fret about technological disruption and income inequality. So could basic income be welfare for our digital age? To discuss this, I'm joined by Anthony Painter of the think tank RSA and Lex writer Giles Wilkes. Anthony, you've written a paper recently about this topic. Why do you think basic income is a good idea?
It goes way beyond welfare. It's about the entire relationship between ourselves and the government and the support we get to enable us to live our lives. And our argument is very simple. A basic income is a basic foundation that allows people to build their lives, whether they're going to set up a business, work, learn, care for others. And that basic foundation of security is absolutely essential in these times.
Okay, but if we're giving people money and they don't have to do anything in return, do we not have a risk that actually people just won't work at all, and then where will the nation's wealth come from?
Haven't you just described just what the welfare state does, except it does it in a slightly more complicated way? They say, well, the state does need to help you if you don't have very much money, and we understand that there is terrible things happen to people if they go below a certain level, but we don't need to give money to literally everybody because most people are fine.
Well, working lives are changing.
Right.
And there's an argument about the future of work, and there's sort of apocalyptic scenarios about automation, all the rest of it. But already people are having to transition between careers, have to think about their future, have to prepare for the future. So it goes beyond those who are on low income. And the current system affects quite negatively people in the low pay, no pay bracket. But increasingly people...
How does that happen? I mean, how does it affect them negatively?
It essentially locks them in that position. So at the moment, if you're in a few hours of work, very low pay, your life is basically bouncing between the local job centre and low pay, low quality work. And how do you get out of that position? Because actually the interference of the state with you in that system is forcing you to behave a certain way that prevents you doing the longer term things that might be able to develop.
But Anthony, just to cut in there, that's all fine, but why do people like the three of us need to be paid an extra amount of money from the state? Isn't that just dead weight?
It's a very efficient way of distributing money, just by giving people a cash payment already. But already we all receive benefits. We receive a National Health Service. We pretty much all receive a personal allowance in the tax system. So actually the basic income builds on a lot of those things rather than replaces the current logic of the system entirely.
But isn't it also slightly patronising to imply that just because we have a welfare system that pays people contingent on not being well off, they are forced, as you say, just to carry on staying in that position? I mean, everybody wants to better themselves. That tends to be the basic presumption of quite a lot of right-wing thinking people. Yes. They say, everyone wants to get on better, let's get out of their way. We're not automatons who just say, I tell you what, I'm not going to work because the state's giving me money down here.
I couldn't agree with you more, actually. Entirely right. And I think part of the logic of the current system is actually the opposite of that. We assume that people don't want to work. And because of that, it's the baggage that you build on top of the current system that matters, the conditionality, the sanctions, and so on. But I have to emphasise this point, it's not just about welfare, it's about tax and support for life and work beyond that. And the problem is if you narrow this debate to being just about welfare, you missed a bigger argument, which is about how we live our working lives going forward and what support we have in order to do that.
Okay, what about labour force participation though? I mean, do you not think that actually we'll end up with much lower labour force participation at a time when we really need a lot of people to be working, not just for the sake of GDP growth, but also because there's lots of evidence that suggests that actually working is good for people?
I don't think you will see that effect for the simple reason, actually, if you look at the level of the basic income we've proposed, which on 2012 price is £3,600 per person, more for their kids, and you combine that with a national living wage, there is a big incentive to work. And as Giles has already said, people have the incentive to work anyway. There are certain groups who may not. And the reason they may not is because they want to retrain or they want to spend more time with their kids at a younger age. And that's what we found in basic income experiments in the States in the 1970s. And those are good impacts because there are some people who want to be away from the labour market because it helps build a more secure future for their families going forward.
I mean, can I ask
Final
about
point from you, Giles?
Yes, of course. Another point, you say people say it's a simpler system, less interaction with the state. Can I ask you about a couple of things? Why is state interaction such a bad idea? We have quite a well-rated Job Centre Plus, which is good at getting people in, but you need people to have to go in, have conversations. And maybe I'll ask you to answer that one first, as it's a final point.
Okay, fine. Well, I mean, if you look at the prison system, for example, it works. People are kept off the streets, people who commit crimes are punished. But actually when you look at the detail of the reality of the way people are in the prison system, no one would say the system is working because it doesn't allow people to rehabilitate in a way that they might. It's the same with the welfare system. If you set that single metric, does it get people into work? Well, yes, in a short-term sense that it does. But the longer-term impacts of that in terms of mental health, family stability, pay progression, increasing skills, social mobility, I would say are very costly, and some of the evidence suggests that it is. So there is a tension between the short and the long term, and that's a price we pay for getting our employment up in a way that we're doing it now.
Great. Anthony, Giles, thank you very much for joining us. That was a fascinating discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.